Look at this cylinder and talk about how to find the surface area. If I go ahead and I convert this into a net, like if I unfolded everything and laid it flat on a piece of table, what I would find is that I would have my two circles on the top and on the bottom. But then if I think about this side right here, kind of like a label of a soup can, and I unroll it, that shape would ultimately make a rectangle. And so if I want to find the surface area of this cylinder, what I need to do is I need to find, number one, the area of the circle on the top, the area of the circle on the bottom, and then lastly, the area of this rectangle. And so the question is, well, what is the area formula of a circle? Well, that's pi times radius squared. So that's going to be the same for the bottom circle. And then the area formula for this shape, which is a rectangle, is just going to be the length times the width. And so the big thing we have to consider is if this is my distance here, my width of this rectangle, it's pretty easy to figure out. That's just however tall this cylinder is. However, the width of this portion of the rectangle, this is where we wonder, well, there's nowhere in this picture that just shows me the width of the rectangle the way the height is shown. And that's when we have to think about this. If this is a label of a soup can, how do you put this back onto the soup can? Well, when you unroll it, you realize the label of the soup can, if it starts here, if this is my starting point, it's going to wrap all the way around the outside of this cylinder. In other words, it's going to trace around the perimeter of this circle. And so what do we call the perimeter of the circle? Well, we call that the circumference. And so if you remember about circumference, the circumference is equal to 2 times pi times the radius. So my length here is going to simply be 2 pi times the radius. And so now we have all the components that we need in order to find the surface area of this shape. And let's go ahead and let's look at one example. Say I have a cylinder that has a diameter of exactly 10 inches. And then let's say that same cylinder has a height of 8 inches. Okay? So now let's think about this in terms of what we call a net. If you lay it flat on the ground, I have my two circles as my bases, and the rectangle in the middle, we know has a height, right here is our height, has a height of 8 inches. But remember, the width of that rectangle is going to be the distance around this circle. So the width of that is going to be whatever the circumference of the circle is. And over here, I need to calculate my circumference. So it's 2 times the pi times the radius. And so if my diameter is 10 inches, that means my radius from the middle to the edge is going to be half of that. So my circumference is 2 pi times the radius, which is 5, since my diameter is 10. So if I go ahead and type into my calculator 2 times 3.14 times 5, I get 31.4. And so now that means that the width of this rectangle is 31.4. So the area of my rectangle in the middle is going to be the length times the width, 8 inches times 31.4 inches, which when I plug that into a calculator is 251.2 inches squared. So that's just the area of this rectangle. If you're thinking of this as the label of a soup can, that would be the area of it. Now we need to find the area of the top and bottom circle. So in these cylinders, we're assuming they're the same. So if I find the area of the top circle, I can just multiply that by 2 to get the area of the bottom. And remember, our area formula is equal to pi times the radius squared. So it's going to be pi, which is 3.14, times my radius squared. And if my radius is 5, well, 5 squared is going to be 25. So if I just do 3.14 times 5 squared, I get an answer of 78.5. So this is the area of one of the circles. That means the other circle is also going to be 78.5. So when I add up all of my areas, I get 251.2 plus 78.5 plus another 78.5. I should get a total surface area of 408.2 inches squared.